Stop for a moment. Because what you are about to hear is not just another idea, it's a line you cross. A realization that, once it settles in, changes how you see everything: your past, your present, and what you thought was possible for your future. This is not about motivation. It's about recognition. If you truly hear this, if you allow it to land, you won't walk away the same person who started listening. There is a principle at work in your life right now, quiet, constant, and exact. It does not pause, it does not forget, and it does not judge. It simply reflects. This principle is this: what you assume to be true becomes your reality. Not occasionally, not by chance, but consistently and without exception. An assumption is not just a thought that passes through your mind. It is something deeper. It is what you accept as fact within yourself. It is the belief you no longer question, the feeling that seems natural, the inner conclusion you have reached about who you are and how life works. And once something is accepted at that level, it begins to shape your experience. Most people are unaware of their assumptions. They move through life reacting to what they see, believing that the world is determining their experience. If something goes wrong, they assume life is difficult. If they face rejection, they assume they are not valued. If they encounter delay, they assume things never work out for them. These assumptions are rarely questioned, yet they are repeated internally until they feel true. And what feels true becomes real. This is why certain patterns repeat in your life. It is not because life is random or unfair. It is because your assumptions remain consistent. The world simply mirrors what you have accepted within. It reflects your inner conclusions back to you in visible form. Now, here is where everything changes. If your assumptions are creating your reality, then you are not bound to your current circumstances. You are not stuck. You are not limited by what you see. You are only experiencing what you have accepted as true. And what has been accepted can be changed. But this change does not happen by force. You cannot simply deny your current reality or pretend it does not exist. True change begins by becoming aware of what you have been assuming. You begin to notice the quiet beliefs you carry. This is hard. I am not ready. This isn't for me. These are not just thoughts, they are assumptions. And they are shaping your experience. Once you become aware, you have a choice. You can continue to accept these assumptions, or you can replace them. Replacing an assumption does not mean repeating empty words or forcing yourself to think differently for a moment. It means accepting something new as true. It means choosing a new belief about yourself and allowing it to settle within you until it feels natural. For example, instead of assuming things don't work out for me, you begin to accept things always align in my favor. At first, this may feel unfamiliar, even uncomfortable. That is only because it is new. The old assumption has been practiced, reinforced, and accepted over time. But the new one can be too. You return to it gently. You think from it. You feel from it. You begin to see yourself through it. And with each return, it becomes more familiar, more believable, more natural. And as it becomes natural, it begins to express itself. This is not something you force. It happens automatically because once an assumption is accepted, the mind and body begin to act in alignment with it. Your reactions change, your perception shifts. You notice different things, you respond differently, and life responds to you differently. What once seemed difficult may begin to feel easier. What once felt out of reach may begin to come closer. Not because you chased it, but because you changed the assumption that was keeping it distant. This is the quiet power you carry at all times. You are not trying to control the world. You are shaping the lens through which it is experienced. And as that lens changes, so does everything you see. So do not underestimate the assumptions you hold, even the ones that seem small. They are not small. They are the foundation of your reality. They are the silent agreements you have made with yourself about what is possible and what is not. Jam those agreements, and you change your life. Because in the end, it is not circumstances that define you. It is what you assume to be true about yourself within them. And the moment you choose a new assumption and truly accept it, you begin the process of creating a new reality. There is a truth operating beneath everything you experience, yet it is so constant that most people overlook it entirely. It is not loud, it does not announce itself, and it does not argue for attention. It simply reflects. And what it reflects is not what you want, not what you say, and not even what you occasionally think, but what you consistently are being within yourself. Your outer world is not independent of you. It is not a separate force acting upon you. It is a mirror, perfect, precise, and unchanging in its function. It shows you without distortion the state you are occupying internally. Every experience, every interaction, every repeated pattern is an echo of who you are being at the deepest level of identity. This is where most confusion begins. People look at their lives and assume circumstances are the cause. If life feels heavy, they believe life is the source of that heaviness. If relationships are difficult, they assume others are the problem. If opportunities are missing, they assume the world is lacking. But in reality, what they are seeing is not the cause. It is the reflection. And the reflection always follows being. You are always being something in every moment. You are being confident or uncertain. You are being worthy or unworthy. You are being abundant or lacking. These states are not always dramatic or obvious. Often they are subtle, hidden in the background of thought and feeling. But they are active, and they are shaping everything you encounter. What you are being becomes your lens. And through that lens, life is interpreted, experienced, and expressed. If you are being someone who expects difficulty, you will notice difficulty more easily. You will interpret neutral events as challenges. You will anticipate problems before they arise. Not because life is difficult, but because your state is filtering your perception. If you are being someone who feels secure and supported, the same world appears differently. You notice possibilities. You respond with ease. You move with a sense of quiet confidence that influences outcomes in ways that feel natural, even effortless. The world has not changed. What you are being has changed. This is why external effort alone often leads to frustration. You can take new actions while still being the same internally, and the results will reflect the unchanged state. Action is powerful, but it is always secondary to being. Action expresses identity, it does not create it. So the real question is never just what should I do? The deeper question is who am I being as I do it? Because you can perform the same action from two completely different states and receive completely different outcomes. One action taken from doubt carries hesitation. The same action taken from certainty carries strength. The difference is not in behavior, it is in being. This is where transformation truly begins, not by forcing new behaviors, but by changing the state from which those behaviors arise. To shift who you are being, you must first become aware of it. You begin to notice your automatic reactions, your default thoughts, your emotional tendencies. These are clues pointing to the state you are occupying. You are not trying to judge them. You are simply observing them. And in that observation, something important happens. You create space. In that space, you are no longer fully identified with the old state. You begin to see that you are not your reactions. You are the one observing them. And from that position, you gain the ability to choose. You can continue being what you have always been, or you can choose a new state. This choice is subtle. It does not require force or struggle. It begins with a simple shift in attention. You ask yourself, what would it feel like to be the version of me who already has what I desire? Not as imagination, but as identity. You allow yourself to step into that feeling. At first, it may feel unfamiliar, but with repetition, it becomes more natural. You begin to return to it more easily. It starts to influence how you think, how you respond, how you perceive situations. And gradually, without effort, your being shifts, and as your being shifts, the world must reflect it. People begin to respond differently. Situations unfold in new ways. Opportunities align more naturally. Not because the world has changed independently, but because you have changed what is being expressed through you. This is why the outer world cannot lead, it can only follow. So instead of trying to fix what is outside, focus on what you are being inside, because that is where everything begins. And once you truly understand this, not just intellectually, but experientially, you realize something profound. You are not waiting for life to show you something new. You are the one becoming it first. There is a stage in every transformation that most people misunderstand, not because it is hidden, but because it is invisible at first. It is the stage where everything has already begun to shift, yet nothing in the outer world seems different. And because nothing looks different, many assume nothing is happening. But in truth, this is where all real change begins. Within the outer world is always delayed. It does not lead your transformation, it reveals it after the fact. What you experience outside is always the result of something that has already taken place within your consciousness. This is why waiting for external proof before believing in inner change keeps you trapped in the same cycle. You are asking the reflection to move before the source has finished shifting. But the source always moves first. When you decide, even subtly, to see yourself differently, something begins to reorganize within you. It may not feel dramatic. In fact, it often feels quiet, almost insignificant. A slight change in how you think about yourself. A moment where an old reaction doesn't feel as strong as it used to. A new possibility that enters your awareness and lingers a little longer than before. These are not random. They are signs of internal restructuring, yet because they are not visible externally, they are often ignored. This is where patience becomes essential, but not passive patience, active trust. Trust that what has shifted within you is real, even when it has not yet taken form outside. Trust that the inner movement is not imaginary, but foundational. Think of it like planting a seed. When the seed is placed in the soil, nothing appears above ground for a while. If you judged its success only by what you can see, you would assume nothing is happening. But beneath the surface, a process is unfolding that will eventually become visible. Roots form, structure builds, life organizes itself in silence. Before it expresses itself in form, your inner shift works in the same way. When you adopt a new assumption, a new feeling, a new way of seeing yourself, you are planting a seed in consciousness. At first, there is no external confirmation. Life continues to show you old patterns, familiar situations, unchanged conditions. But these are not evidence against your change. They are simply echoes of what was already established before the shift began. And if you react to those echoes, you reinforce them. But if you remain steady in your inner change, something begins to happen beneath the surface. The old patterns start to lose their strength. They no longer feel as convincing. Your reactions begin to soften. Your inner response to life begins to stabilize in a new direction. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, a new reality begins forming around you. This is why the inner shift must be protected from external doubt. Doubt often arises when people look for immediate proof. They expect change to appear quickly, and when it does not, they assume nothing is working. But this assumption itself interrupts the process. It pulls you back into the old state, reinforcing what you are trying to move away from. The key is to remain internally aligned even when externally nothing seems to reflect it yet. You do this by returning to the new state repeatedly, not with effort, but with awareness. You remind yourself of who you have decided to be. You reconnect with the feeling of the wish fulfilled. You allow yourself to dwell in that state long enough for it to feel more familiar than the old one. And as it becomes more familiar, it becomes more dominant. And what is dominant within must eventually appear without. This is the natural order of things. Inner reality always precedes outer reality. What you consistently hold within eventually becomes the structure of your external experience. It may take time, not because it is uncertain, but because it is unfolding through layers of adjustment. So instead of measuring change by what you see, begin to measure it by what you are becoming internally. Are your reactions shifting? Are your assumptions changing? Are your emotional responses evolving? These are the real indicators of transformation, because by the time the outer world reflects it, the change has already been completed within you for some time. This is why true change cannot be rushed. It must be embodied. It must be allowed to settle, to stabilize, to root itself deeply enough that it becomes your new normal. And once it becomes your new normal, the outer world has no choice but to follow. So trust the unseen beginning of your transformation. Honor it, stay with it, because everything you will ever see changed in your life has already changed within you first. There is a quiet but powerful shift that changes everything in the way you experience life. It is the movement away from waiting and into being. Most people spend their days waiting for circumstances to improve before they allow themselves to feel different. They wait for success before they feel confident, wait for love before they feel worthy, wait for stability before they feel at peace. But in doing so, they unknowingly postpone the very thing they are seeking, because life does not respond to waiting. It responds to feeling. And more precisely, it responds to the feeling of already having. This is where everything begins to shift. Instead of waiting for external evidence to justify a new emotional state, you enter that state first. You allow yourself to feel as though what you desire is already real, already present, already part of your life. Not as imagination in a distant sense, but as an inner experience that you occupy now. This is not about pretending or denying reality. It is about understanding that feeling is the bridge between what is unseen and what becomes seen. Every experience in your life began as a feeling you accepted as true. Before anything appeared in your world, it was first lived internally as a state. So if feeling creates experience, then waiting for experience before feeling, it is a reversal of creation. To step into the feeling of already having means you stop placing your emotional state in the future. You withdraw it from when this happens and bring it into the present moment. You ask yourself a simple but powerful question. If this were already true, how would I feel right now? Not tomorrow, not someday now. And then you allow that feeling to be experienced within you, even briefly. A sense of calm, a sense of fulfillment, a quiet confidence, a subtle certainty, whatever naturally arises when you imagine your desire already fulfilled. You are not forcing it, you are allowing it, At first, this may feel unfamiliar because your senses may not yet reflect it. The outer world may still show absence, delay, or uncertainty. But this is where most people disconnect from the process. They look outward and conclude that because they do not see it, they cannot feel it. Yet this is exactly where transformation begins. You are not responding to what is visible. You are choosing what is true within. And when you persist in that inner feeling, something begins to change. It may not be immediate or dramatic, but it is real. Your emotional baseline begins to shift. The feeling of lack becomes less dominant. The feeling of possibility becomes more accessible. You start to notice that you are not reacting the same way you used to. This is the beginning of alignment, and alignment is everything. Because when your inner feeling aligns with the state of already having, your thoughts begin to reflect that alignment. Your expectations change. Your perception of situations changes. You begin to interpret life differently, not from the perspective of absence, but from the perspective of fulfillment already existing. This is not imagination in the sense of escape. It is imagination in the sense of creation. You are no longer observing life and reacting to it. You are entering a state where you are experiencing life from the end result inwardly, and that internal experience becomes the cause of your external reality. Over time, this practice becomes more natural. What once required conscious effort begins to feel familiar. You no longer have to remind yourself constantly. You simply return to it effortlessly. The feeling of already having becomes your default emotional state. And when that happens, something profound occurs. Your outer world begins to reorganize itself around that state, not because you forced it, but because it must reflect what you are consistently being within. You may notice changes appearing gradually, situations shifting, opportunities emerging, people responding differently, not as sudden miracles, but as natural outcomes of a new internal condition. And the key is this: you did not chase any of it, you simply entered a feeling and remained loyal to it. So instead of asking, when will this happen? You begin to ask, can I feel this as already done now? Because that question shifts everything. It brings you out of waiting and into being. And in that state of being, life no longer feels like something you are trying to reach. It feels like something you are already experiencing from within and watching unfold without. There is a quiet discipline that separates fleeting change from lasting transformation. It is not intensity, effort, or sudden inspiration. It is something far more subtle, yet far more powerful: loyalty. Not loyalty to external circumstances, not loyalty to appearances, but loyalty to an inner state that you have chosen to embody. This loyalty is what determines whether your shift becomes temporary or becomes your reality. Most people experience moments of insight. They feel inspired, they imagine a new version of themselves, they briefly step into a different emotional state. But then they look outward. They check their circumstances. They measure their progress by what they see. And when the outer world does not immediately reflect the inner change, they abandon it. They return to old thoughts, old feelings, old assumptions, and in doing so, they cancel the very shift they had begun. Because the outer world is always delayed, it never responds instantly to your inner change. It reflects what you have been consistently being, not what you have just briefly touched. This delay is where most people lose their stability. They assume that because nothing has changed outside, nothing has changed at all. But in truth, the inner state is always the first to move. The outer world simply takes time to align. This is why loyalty to the inner state is essential. To stay loyal means to remain committed to what you have chosen to feel and accept as true within yourself, even when there is no external validation. It means you do not abandon your new identity just because the old world is still appearing. You do not switch back to doubt just because certainty has not yet manifested physically. Instead, you hold your ground within. You return again and again to the feeling of the state you have chosen, not as effort, not as struggle, but as remembrance. You remind yourself of who you are being now. You reconnect with the inner experience of fulfillment, even if only briefly. And each time you do, you strengthen the new direction. This is not about ignoring reality. It is about understanding its timing. What you see externally is not a verdict. It is a reflection in motion, and reflections always lag behind the source. So if you have shifted internally, you are already in transition. Even if nothing looks different yet, the movement has begun. But it is your consistency that determines whether that movement stabilizes or collapses back into the old pattern. Loyalty is what stabilizes it. And loyalty is not loud. It does not require constant affirmation. It is quiet, steady, and persistent. It is the simple act of not abandoning yourself internally. Even when doubt arises, you do not let it define you. Even when circumstances contradict your inner state, you do not let them overwrite it. You acknowledge them, but you do not identify with them. Instead, you return. This returning is the practice. Each time you come back to your chosen state, you reinforce it. You make it more familiar, more natural, less like something you are trying to do, and more like something you are simply being. And over time, something begins to shift. The old state loses its emotional grip. It no longer feels as convincing. The new state begins to feel more stable, more consistent, more like home. This is the point where inner change begins to solidify. And when it solidifies, the outer world must respond, not because you forced it, but because it has no choice but to reflect what is now dominant within you. So the real work is not in constantly seeking change outside, but in staying faithful inside, staying aligned with the state you have chosen, even when it is not yet visible, especially when it is not yet visible, because that is where transformation is either strengthened or abandoned. And if you remain loyal long enough, something remarkable happens. What once required effort becomes natural. What once felt imagined becomes lived. What once felt like a shift becomes your identity. And at that point, you no longer have to remind yourself. You simply are it. So do not measure your progress by what you see too soon. Measure it by how long you can remain true to the inner state you have chosen. Because everything you are waiting for externally is already forming in response to that inner loyalty. And once you understand this deeply and clearly, you realize something powerful. The world does not lead your transformation. It follows your faithfulness to the state you hold within. Now you see it. The world you once thought was fixed is actually fluid, shaped quietly by what you accept within yourself. Nothing needed to change first on the outside, only your awareness of what you have been holding as true. And now that you've seen it, you cannot unsee it. The power was never somewhere else. It was always with you. Stay with this understanding. Return to it. Live from it. And watch how your reality begins to shift, not by force, but by alignment with who you choose to be. Thank you for being here, and more importantly, for being open enough to truly hear this. If something within you shifted, don't ignore it. Follow it. Let it guide how you think, how you feel, and how you move through your life. Until next time, remember, the moment you change within, everything begins to change around you.